Today we're going to learn Berakhot 43. We're going to start at the top of Mem Gimel, Hesevu, fifth line, Hesevu Echad Mevarech. Amarav, Loshana, we were up to the Mishnah where it said, if they lean, then one blesses for all of them, but if they're sitting, then not. So Amarav, Loshanu ela pat, Debai Haseba. This is only bread. The bread needs reclining. Aval yayin lo bai haseba. If you're drinking wine, one can be motzi others, you don't need to recline. For Rabbi Yochanan Amar, filu yayin nami bai haseba. Even if you're drinking wine, you still need to recline in order for one to be yotze all the others. That's the first reading of the Machloket Rav and Rabbi Yochanan. But Igad Amr, some people say their Machloket was actually different. Amarav lo shanu ela pat, de mahanya le haseba. Aval yayin lo mahanya le haseba. Some people say that this is only referring to bread. That bread, it works, it's effective if you lean. But wine, it's not effective if you lean, meaning wine, you can never be motzi anyone, even if you're leaning. That doesn't work. Only leaning with bread works. Leaning plus bread equals, we're together. But with you just drinking wine, that doesn't work. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, filu yayin nami mahanya le haseba. But Rabbi Yochanan says, no, even wine, haseba works, and one can be motzi other people. Meitive. But now we have a question on Rav according to both readings. The following source says, Ketzad seder haseba. How did this work? Okay, we talked about yesterday that it was based on the Roman or the Greek symposiums. How did it work? What would happen? And this sounds very much like an event that we would go to nowadays, a wedding, a bar, a bat mitzvah. Orchim nechnesim v'yoshvim al gabei safsalim. First, people go into the reception area. They sit on benches, ve'al gabei katedraot, and on particular chairs they had, ad shikansu kulam, until everybody got there. In the interim, heviu lahem mayim, they brought them water to wash with. Kol echad ve'echad notel yado, everybody would wash one hand. Normally we wash two hands. In this case, they'd only wash yado achat, one hand. And then that was in order that they would hold the wine. There's a bunch of different opinions why you need to. In general, we're worried that your hands might have touched something that was impure. And then we're worried if you touch the liquid, it might make it impure. So the hand that's going to hold the wine, you wash. Ba'alehem yayin, so then they would bring out wine. There, everybody makes the blessing for themselves. Alu vehesevu, then when they go in and they lean, they go into the main room and they lean. Uba'alehem mayim, even though, right now they bring them water, even though everybody already washed one hand, they now wash both hands. Ba'alehem yayin, they bring them wine. Even though everybody already made their own bracha before, then when they go in, they make a new bracha on the wine and one blesses for everybody. So lehech lishna de Rav, according to the version of Rav that he said, Lo shanu ala pat debai haseba, val yayin lo ba'u haseba. Yayin, you don't need to actually be leaning. Well, kashiresha. The first part is hard. In the reception, shane orchin dedatai uleme aker. Sorry, let me just explain the question. That's already the answer. The beginning is difficult because they were sitting in the reception and everybody had to make their own blessing. According to Rav, you don't even need haseba for wine. One could have been motzi other people. So they say, Shane orchin dedatai uleme aker. Everybody knows when you're at a reception, at a smorgasbord, nobody really sits. Nobody's really, even if you're sitting very temporarily. You know that this is very temporary. If you're sitting in a place like that, that doesn't count as enough, according to Rav, as being together. And that's why only when you go into the main room is it considered together. According to the second version, that Rav said that only bread needs haseba, but only bread, haseba is effective, leaning is effective, but with wine, haseba is not effective. Kashya seifa. Now the second part is difficult because what does it say? When you go into the main room, one can say the blessing on wine for other people. So what do they say? Even though haseba shouldn't work. So they say, shane hatam, that's different. Demigo de kamahanya le haseba lepat, mahanya le haseba liyayin. Since you're already sitting together for bread, well then the wine also one can say the blessing for everyone else. But if you're only drinking wine, that will never count as haseba. It's only when you're drinking wine in the context of a meal where there's bread, then the haseba will be effective, that even for your wine, one can say the blessing for everybody else. Okay, next section. Ba'alehem yayin b'toch hamazon. We had that case where when the wine comes in the middle of the meal, everybody has to make a blessing for themselves. At the end of the meal, one makes a blessing for everybody else. So we said we'd have to explain this in the Gemara. Shalu et Ben Zoma. They asked Ben Zoma the following question, exactly this. Mipnei ma amru ba'alem yayin b'toch hamazon kol echad ve'echad mevarech latzmo b'lachar hamazon echad mevarech lekulam. Why, when they brought the wine in the middle of the meal, they each have to make their own blessing, but after the meal's over, one can bless for all of them? Amar lahem ho'il ve'ein beit habliyah panui. Because people's throats, right, their mouths are full of food. Okay, now what does that have to do with anything? Why can't, in the middle of the meal, your mouth is full of food. So you can't have someone else make a blessing for you. So a bunch of different interpretations. One is they're worried about danger. It's dangerous. You might choke if you start answering Amen at the end of someone's bracha in order to fulfill your obligation for wine. Let's say they're taking the blessing of wine. You've got food in your mouth. So it's dangerous. If you start saying Amen, you might choke. Second option, you're busy eating. Your throat is full, your mouth is full of food. Now, according to this interpretation, we're going to say that since you can't theoretically drink right now because your mouth is full of food, if I were making my own blessing, then I can't make a blessing with my mouth full of food. So I can't then get my obligation fulfilled with your blessing when my mouth is full of food. That's also logical. The third option is you're not actually focusing. I was thinking when you go to an event and they have the speeches in the middle of the meal and everybody's busy eating. Right? I have friends who always do their speeches before the meal. Why do they do their speeches before the meal? Right? They have everybody sitting in an area where everyone can hear the speeches because then everybody's focusing. When everybody's eating, nobody's focusing on the speeches. Likewise, if somebody makes the blessing for somebody else, so while you're in the middle of eating, you're not really focusing. And you need to have intent when you make the bracha. Again, this would show intent is important, which isn't so clear cut. That's why you make your own blessing. Okay, these are just interpretations that the Rishonim gave or Achronim gave for, the commentaries gave for what this means. The person who made the blessing on the wine for everybody after the meal also makes the blessing on the incense that they would bring at the end of the meal for smell. The fact that they have to tell you this, right? Why would you even need? It must be it's a scenario where there's someone more important than him that you might have thought would get the opportunity. He would be the one chosen to make the blessing. And what they're telling you here is, even though there's someone more important, since he already made a blessing on the wine for everybody, he now becomes the chosen one to do, or he can, if he wants, even if there's someone more important than him, he can make the blessing on the incense. Okay, this shows that there's kind of a few issues at stake. There's importance because you're more important, because let's say you know more Torah, and then there's importance because you already started with a blessing, and that's what we're saying. If you already were the one who made the bracha, then you already have some sort of importance associated with you. Some people say this is only if the person greater than you allows you to, or asks you to, or is okay with it. So there's a debate about how seriously we take, giving a kibud, a job to someone who is, right, does it have to go to the biggest, most important person in the room or not necessarily? V'amai, why should that work? Okay, the reason is, right, one second. Yes, some people take out this sentence. It doesn't really make so much sense, so we're going to go with that version, that we take out these words. And then the Gemara is just saying, right, from here you can see there's someone more important. Misayele l'Rav, and this supports the statement that Rav said. Amar Rav Chia bar Ashi amar Rav, he said in the name of Rav, Hanotel yadav tchila ba'achrona, if you're the first one to wash mayim achronim, hu mizuman lebracha, he's the one who benches. Someone who does the mitzvah first. Okay, we'll see. We'll connect this at the end of the daf when we talk about someone who comes to the Beit Midrash last. Someone who does the mitzvah first, it's a sign of, zrizut, of he has intent to kind of passion to do things. So he gets to do the bracha on Birkat Hamazon. Rav Rabbi Chia havu yatvu kamei Rebbe besudata. Again, we have a scenario. Rav and Rabbi Chia, who were the students of Rebbe, were sitting at a meal with Rebbe. Amar le Rebbe le Rav, he said to Rav, kum mashe yadach, go wash your hands, mayim achronim, the water that we wash after the meal. Chazeh to have a mirtat. Rabbi Chia saw that he was a little bit hesitant, a little bit worried. Amar le Rabbi Chia says to him, Bar Pachte, you're the son of great people. Ayem Birkat Hamazon ka'amalach. What he's trying to tell you isn't as he thought that maybe he was telling him he's dirty or something like that, that it was some sort of, he was being critical of him. But Rabbi Chia said, no, he's telling you make the bracha, be the first to do mayim achronim, so that basically I'm choosing you to lead the zimun, the benching. Amar Rabbi Zera, Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah. Me'ematayim avrachina lareach. Okay, now we're going to get into laws of smell. If you smell something nice, you make a blessing on it also. It's kind of like before you eat, so before you smell, you make a blessing. So now he says, at what point do you do it? What would they do? They would do an incense, and the smoke would come up. When the smoke starts to rise, that's the moment when you make the blessing. But how could you do that? He didn't even smell it yet. How can he make the blessing? So the Amarle, he says to him, pretty obvious answer. According to you, same thing with any Berakhot, right? Any blessing where we benefit, we always say the blessing and then we benefit. It's the same thing. And it's with the bread. He was intending to eat. Here he was intending to smell. So of course you can make the bracha before the action. Some people ask, what was he thinking in the first place to even ask the question? So there are those who say that there's a difference between bread and smelling, because the smelling, you're smelling smoke. There's not actually anything tangible there. When you're talking about bread, so the bread is in front of him, he can even hold it, right? Theoretically, some people say maybe you're supposed to hold the bread. But the smell you can't hold. So maybe because of that, there's nothing tangible. Maybe you would think that you can't make the blessing until after you smell. But the answer is no, you can. Amar Rabbi Chia Braita de Abba Bar Nachmani, Amar Rav Chisda Amar Rav, Amar La Amar Rav Chisda Amar Ze'eri. Okay, there's a debate about who exactly said this. Kol HaMugmarot mevarchin aleihem borei atzei b'samim, chutz mi mushk, shemin chayahu. Okay, and all the incenses, these smells that we have, we say borei atzei b'samim, except for one called mushk, which comes from an animal. And that's why we don't say atzei b'samim. Now we're getting into the specifics of the bracha. It comes from the tree of the b'samim, so that we don't say because this comes from an animal. There's actually a range of how it came from an animal. Rashi actually says it comes from the feces of the animal. So the dung, that's a little odd. Or it comes from the sweat of the animal. Other people say it comes from part of the neck bone of something in the neck of like some substance that's in the neck of a type of deer. Whatever it is, it comes from an animal. And therefore, what's the bracha you say? Borei minei b'samim, a more general blessing about fragrances in general. Meitive. Now we have a contradiction. Ein mevarchin borei atzei b'samim ela ala farsimon shel beit Rebbe, v'ala farsimon shel beit Kesar, v'ala hadas sheb'chol makom. The only time you say borei atzei b'samim is on these specific things. The farsimon, the balsam tree, was known to be very special. And they only had it in very wealthy places, like Beit Rebbe, and Rebbe was known to be wealthy. It was the Nasi and the Beit Kesar, right, the Roman emperor, and the Hadas that you find everywhere, because that's also Atzei B'Samim. So it sounds like you don't say Atzei B'Samim and anything else. So they say Tiyuvta. In fact, this is a question. It sounds from here like you wouldn't make a bracha, borei atzei b'samim, and other things, but we're going to see from the continuation of the sugya, and some people actually have a bit of a different version here, that it's not only hadas, but anything like a hadas. And then in fact, we do say atzei b'samim on other things, and we're going to talk about that soon. Amar le Rav Chisda le Rav Yitzchak, hai mishchad afar simon, oil that comes, balsam oil, mai mevarchin elaveh. What bracha do we say when we smell it? Amar le hachi amar Rav Yehuda borei shemen artzenu. Okay, Rav Yehuda said it's the one who creates the oil of our land, because Israel was known to have special afar simon trees. Amarle bar minei de Rav Yehuda. So Rav Chisda says to Rav Yitzchak, ignore Rav Yehuda. De chaviva le'eretz Israel. He loves Israel. He's unique in this way, and that's why he mentioned Israel in his blessing. But lekule amamai. What about the rest of us that don't have this crazy, loving feeling toward Israel, which is just interesting to see? Amarle hachi amar Rabbi Yochanan borei shemen arev. You say, created the beautiful or the pleasant oil. Okay, you see here, it was so special that it had its own special blessing. Amar Rav Ada bar Ava, hai kisharta, mevarchinan ilave borei aseh b'samim. Okay, this is a spice called kosht in Hebrew, which is one of the spices used in the Torah that they would make in the Beit HaMikdash. Okay, it's called, let me just see the name. It's kostas. Okay, that's what it says in the Koran. Again, for these kind of things, the Koran has great explanations of what all these things are. They have pictures of all the upcoming spices. So if you have a Koran, it's good to look. So now they say, but mishcha kvisha. So this kasharta, you say borei atzei b'samim. But mishcha kvisha, but if it has oil which has this spice in it, then you don't say that blessing. Rav Kahana amar afilu mishcha kvisha. No. If it has the spices in the oil, you still say this blessing, atzei b'samim, but mishchatchina, but once it's ground up, the spice is low. Nehardea Amre, okay, we're going to keep going in order. Nehardea says, Afilu mishchatchina, even if it's ground up, okay, then you would still say it, okay? The only time you wouldn't say it is if it's totally dissolved and you don't see it at all. Amarav Gidel Amarav. Hi Simlak, Mivrachin ilavei borei samim. Okay, Rashi says it's Yasmin, okay? It's the jasmine, that we know to be jasmine. Mivrachin, okay, these all have stalks. Mivrachin alavei borei, so you say aseh b'samim. Amarav Chanan al Amarav, Hane chalfe diyama, Mivrachin alay borei b'samim. Okay, this is, it's called either camel grass or fever grass or West Indian lemongrass. Okay, lemongrass sounds the most familiar to me out of all these things. You would say, Borei b'samim. Amar merzutra maikra. Where do you get a pasuk? What pasuk proves that these things, because they're stalks, right? They're not itzim. They don't grow on trees. They're bushes. So what's the proof? V'hi hel tama gaga v'titmaneim b'pishtei ha'etz. This is with Rachav Hazonah when she hides the spies. It says she brought them up to the roof, and she hid them with pishtei ha'etz, with the flax branches. Now the flax, okay, is not a tree. It doesn't grow on a tree. So we learn from there that you can call it eitz even if it's a bush. Okay. Amar Marzutra. Rav Masharshi Amar. Hi narkom. Okay, narkom is a rose. So it depends now which type it is. Okay, or I just want to check in the Koran. They call it a daffodil actually. They call it a narkis. Okay, like in Hebrew narkis, a daffodil. So they say, what about a narkom? Diginuta, if it grows in the garden, because the stem is hard. Didabra, where the stem is much softer, in the desert, when it grows wild, borei isvei b'samim. Then you say isvei b'samim, which is more like grassy, like esev is grass. So there it's more thin. Amarav sheshet hai sigale, okay, sigaliot. Okay, this is what we call violets. Okay, so the violets, what do you say on those? Mivrachin alayhu borei isvei b'samim. Amar marzutra haiman demoach be'etrog b'chavusha. What if you smell a fruit? An etrog or a chavush is a quince. If you make a bracha on a quince, you smell it, what would you make a bracha on? Okay, now this is different. You'd say, Baruch shenatan reach tov b'peirot, because these were grown not for spice purposes, but for fruit, for eating them purposes, or fruit purposes. Amar Rav Yehuda, Haiman de nafik b'yomei Nisan. Okay, this is what we call Berkata Ilanot. In Israel, many people go on Tiulim with the kids. My kids go in some of the schools. They take them to see fruit trees to make this blessing in Nisan. Many people could just go outside and do it. V'chazei Ilanei dekam alav. If you see fruit trees that are budding, Omer Baruch shelo chisar ba'olamo klum uvarabo briot tovot ilanot tovot linaot behem b'nei adam. And you say, God is blessed who neglected anything in this world. Everything is here, beautiful creations and beautiful trees in order for people to appreciate them. Amar Rav Zutra Bart, it's a very beautiful blessing. Amar Rav Zutra Bar Tuvia Amarav Minayin Shemevrachim Ala. And by the way, this blessing is only said in Nisan. You have to wait till Nisan, which is the month that Pesach is in. It's when the spring is, right? It's the beginning of the spring season, and you go out in that month and you say this blessing. Amar Rav Zutra Bar Tuvia Amarav Minayin Shemevrachim Ala Reach. How do you know that we bless on smell? Okay, now that we're done with this whole discussion about smell, now they ask the basic question they should have asked in the beginning. Why don't you make the blessing on? Why do you at all make a blessing on a smell? Shenemar, right? It's not actually something tangible. It doesn't stay in your body like food. Shenemar, kol neshamata halalyat. All of the souls shall bless you. Ezu davar sheneshama nehenet mimenu ve'en aguf nehenet mimenu. What is it that your soul benefits from, but not your body? Havei omer zehareach. That's smell. And since Rav Zutra Bar Tuvia said this in the name of Rav, we're now going to have a number of statements that he says in the name of Rav, some connected, some less. V'amar Rav Zutra Bar Tuvia Amarav. Atidim b'churei Yisrael she'yitnu reach tov b'Levanon. It connects a little because it's talking about smell, but we're talking about a metaphysical kind of smell. In the future, the young men are going to, and the idea is that they haven't sinned, these young men who haven't sinned are going to create a beautiful smell in Levanon. Shene'emar yochu yom kotav v'yu ke'zayit hodo v'reach lo ke'Levanon. His smell will be like the Levanon, okay, and they will basically bring, right, it's they're going to bring beautiful things to the people. They'll affect, right, also good smell has its effect on other people, right, they'll be a model for others. This is a pasuk in Kohelet. Everything was done in its proper time. What does that mean? Right, God made everything each night beautiful for its time. Okay, we're going to explain time a little bit differently than we normally explain time. It's a very beautiful idea. God made everybody love their jobs. Okay, first of all, you have to wonder, not everybody loves their job. Okay, but maybe that means that maybe you're not in the right job and people should follow their passions, right? And that people should do what they love doing, right? Like I love teaching, that's why I teach, right? So there's this idea that God helps everybody to love what they do, and therefore you end up with people who, right, it's much more effective when you do what you do because you really love doing it. Another approach is to say that not only that, but more so, God made it so that different people enjoy different jobs, right? This is always fascinating. What I like to do, other people would hate to do. And, everybody or wouldn't like it as much. But everybody's got a special talent and everybody has something that they do. And if we didn't all love doing different things, so there would be jobs that were taken by 50% or 80% of the population, there'd be other jobs that nobody would want to do and we wouldn't be able to have a society. So in order for society to work, God made it so that everybody enjoys a different type of job. Amar Papa. Now, obviously, there are those people who can't find a job they love and don't succeed, and that's a good question how we resolve it with this source. But again, this is something in theory. In practice, things don't always work out the way they should. Amar Papa. This is what people say. Telele kora ledavar acher. Okay, here's an adage they say about this. Hang hearts of palm in front of a pig. And iudide avid, they like to call pigs davar acher. It's like they don't want to say the word pig, so they say something else. Okay, what it means is, right, if you stick a hearts of palm in front of a pig, there's no way he's going to go for it. Iudide avid, he likes his garbage dump. He'd rather eat that than some delicacy of hearts of palm. Amar Rav Zutra bar Tuvia Amarav, avuka kishnayim v'yareach kishlosha. We're now on another statement of Rav Zutra. This already has nothing to do with our topic, or seemingly. If you're walking on the path at night, it's dangerous. And from here, we're going to get into dangers of the night. That's going to take us to the end of the page. If you walk with a torch, it's like you're walking with two. And v'yareach, if you walk with the moon, it's like you're walking with three. Ibailu. So they ask the following question. Avuka kishnayim bahade didei, o dilma avuka kishnayim levarmi didei. Is the torch like two, including a person? Meaning, you walk with a torch, it's like you're two people walking? Or do we say, the torch is like two, and then there's you. So it's like you're walking with two people. What's the relevance of this and why we care? We'll see in a minute. Tashma, let's learn from the statement itself. It says, v'yareach kishlosha. So, i'amart bishlama bahade didei, if you're going to say it's three with the person, shapir, that makes perfect sense. We'll see why. Didn't really tell you yet. Ele i'amart levarmi didei, but if we mean in addition to you, arba'a lamali, what do we need four for? V'ha'marmar, and you might say, why do you need three? But we're going to see, because it said that what? La'achad nir'eh mazik. Now we're going to talk about dangers of the night. They were worried about spirits. Now, how do spirits get to you? Well, if you're alone, right? This is, again, if we understand spirits, not in a literal manner, but fears of people. If you're alone, you're always more scared. You're more susceptible to anything that could happen to you, right? Someone could rob you. It's much more likely when you walk alone, right? We always tell our kids, don't walk alone at night. It's right, something could happen. So if you're one person, nir'eh mazik, the spirit can get you and cause damage. Lishnayim nir'eh ve'eno mazik. If you're two, so he'll appear, but he won't be able to damage you, to harm you. Lishlosha eno nir'eh kol ikar. But if there's three, then he won't be there at all. So that's why the yareach is three is significant. But to say the yareach is four, there's nothing that means four. Once you're three, so you're already fully protected. You don't need anything to be four. And therefore, alalav shmamina avuka kishnayim bahadi didei. It means if you're with a torch, it's like you're two people. Again, it's just very logical. If you have a torch, so there's light. People will less likely to attack you when there's light because someone might come and see. And when there's the light of the moon, that's the best because it's light everywhere, and then you can really, it's much less dangerous. But Amar Rav Zutra bar Tuvia Amarav, his last statement, and even his last statement, it's not clear he said it. Amrila, some people say Amar Rav Chana bar Bizna Amar Rabbi Shimon Chasida. But Amrila, and some people say Amar Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai. Noach lo la'adam she'apil atzmo letoch kivshan ha'esh ve'al yabid pnei chaveiro barabim. Better to go into a burning furnace full of fire than to embarrass somebody else. Minalam, where do we learn this from? Mitamach shene'emar chi mutzeit lo. When she took out Yehuda's stuff, she says, right, whoever this is who. This is who I'm pregnant from, but she didn't say his name, right? She did it in a way that it wouldn't be humiliating to him. So from there we learn not to humiliate other people in public. Tanu Rabbanan. Okay, now we're back to, actually, I did think this was going to take us to the end of the page. I forgot. There's other stuff about Berakhot Arech, and we're going to come back to some dangers of the night at the end. Tanu Rabbanan. The braita says, Heviu lefanav. Okay, we're about halfway through the page right now by the 2 dots. Heviu lefanav shemen v'hadas. If you have both oil in front of you, like the balsam oil that you need to make a blessing on, and a hadas, a myrtle branch, Beit Shammai Omrim, right? 2 separate blessings. So what do you do first? This goes back to what we talked about, order of blessings. Mevarech al Hashem v'achar kach mevarech al hadas. First the oil, then the hadas, because the balsam oil is known to be very respected. Ubeit Hillel Omrim mevarech al hadas v'achar kach mevarech al Hashem. First the myrtle branch, then the oil. Amar Rabban Gamliel, ani achriya. Rabban Gamliel, right here, the big Rabban Gamliel, I'll decide. So what does he say? Shemen zachinu l'reicho v'zachinu l'sichato. Oil, we benefit from smell, and we use it on our skin. Hadas l'reicho zachinu l'sichato lo zachinu. So hadas has less going for it because we only smell it. So therefore, it has more importance. There's more importance to the oil. Let's make a blessing on that. Interestingly, paskins like Beit Shammai. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, halacha k'divrei machriya. Rabbi Yochanan says we paskin like the person who determined, the person who decided, right, the decisor. That's right. Think of him. He's the decisor. Rabban Gamliel, we know he was very strong. Okay, but now we have a story. Rav Papa Ikla Labei Rav Huna Bered Rav Ika goes to the house of Rav Huna, the son of Rav Ika. Aitu l'kamay Hashem and v'adas. So they bring in front of him this balsam oil and a myrtle branch. Shaka Rav Papa, he takes v'barach ahadas bereshe. Dafka specifically takes the myrtle branch first. V'hada baruch Hashem, and then he blesses on the oil. Lo, so Amar Le, Rav Huna says to him, Lo savar lemar halacha k'divrei machriya. Don't you hold like Rabbi Yochanan said that we paskin like Rabban Gamliel? Amar Le, hachi amar Rava halacha k'Beit Hillel. He says no, because Rava says halacha is like Beit Hillel. I hold like Rava. The sugya ended here would be good, and in fact, some people think the sugya ended here. But the Gemara now adds in our version a very strange line. Velohi, in fact, this isn't true. Lishtamute nafshehu da'avid. If we talked about embarrassing people before, he didn't want to be embarrassed himself. So what did he do? He threw out this lie and said, oh, well, don't worry. Rava says, halacha k'Beit Hillel, to kind of save face. It's a very strange line. What Rav Papa would lie about what Rava said, la halacha. People can misconstrue and think that's really true. And how could he possibly say that? So again, if you don't have this version, it makes a lot of sense. You could just very simply say, this isn't what it said. Some people say, and this is quoted in the Masoret HaShas, on the top left side of this page, that he says that he really did it. He wasn't really lying. He was just saying, this is what I hold, but instead of saying it in arrogance, he said, this is what my rabbi holds. Okay. Anyway, the question's better than the answer, and maybe really it's a mistake that it's here, although you have to wonder how this mistake got here. It would be a strange thing for someone to have added by mistake. Tanu Rabbanan, Heviu lefnehem shemen v'yayin. Let's say you have wine and oil. Beit Shammai Omrim ochezet Hashem b'yamino. Put the important one in your right hand, that's the oil. V'tayayim b'smolo, and the wine in your left, right? You would have thought the opposite, but Beit Shammai thinks this. U'mevarech al Hashem v'chozer u'mevarech al hayayin. Again, I think they really saw this balsam oil as something very special and unique. Beit Hillel, and we'll see it in other sugyas about the balsam, how unique it was. Beit Hillel, we saw before, that only Rebbe and the Beit Kesar had it, right? It was only the really wealthy people. Beit Hillel Omrim, ochez et hayayim b'yamino ve'et hashemen b'smolo mevarech al hayayim v'chozer mevarech al hashemen. Specifically the opposite, the wine goes in the right hand and the wine goes first. V'tacho b'rosh hashamash, after you put it on your hand, and now we're going to get into another issue, you rub it off on the person who serves you. You rub it on his head to get rid of the extra smell. Ve'im shamash tamid chachamu, because we'll see that the whole idea is that we didn't want the tamid chacham to be perfumed. And therefore, if he's a Tamid Chacham, tacho b'kotel mipnei shegenai leTamid Chacham latzeit lashuk kashu mevusam. Okay, if you can't do it on the shamash because he's also Tamid Chacham and it's not right for him to have this smell on him, then you rub it off on a wall so that you don't walk around with being perfumed. We'll see in a minute why there's such a concern. Tano Rabbanan, Shisha Dvarim Genai Lo L'Talmid Chacham. There's 6 things that are looked at disrespectfully if a Talmid Chacham does them. Al Yetzei Kshu Mevusam L'Shuk. You shouldn't go out smelling beautifully in the shuk, in the marketplace. Va'al Yetzei Yechidi Balayla. You shouldn't go out alone at night. Va'al Yetzei B'minalim Ametulaim. Patched up shoes. Va'al Yisaperi Misha B'Shuk. You shouldn't go out and talk to a woman in the shuk, in the marketplace. Va'al Yeseh B'Chavua Shalamei Haaretz. You shouldn't eat with people that don't keep halacha very well. Va'al Yikanes Ba'achrona Lebeit HaMidrash. You shouldn't, again, Am Haaretz was either people who are not keeping halacha or people that weren't such good people. Okay, it's not always clear what exactly it means. These were the people that we talked about, the demai, that they were suspect they weren't doing trumot masrot, and that they were worried only when it was financial, a big financial loss, they wouldn't do it. Don't be the last one in the Beit Midrash. Don't walk with a big step, meaning an arrogance, and don't walk very tall and proud. Don't be arrogant. Okay, let's go through the list. Al Yetzei Kshu Mevusam L'Shuk, Amar Rabbi Abba Bered Rabbi Chia Bar Abba Amar Rabbi Yochanan, B'makom Shechashudim Al Mishkav Zachor. It was a place where people were suspect of homosexuality. We were worried that if somebody would walk out with besamim on them, people would suspect them of being homosexuals. They were much less open in those days to homosexuals, and because of the Torah prohibition against it, so they wanted to make sure that Talmidei Chachamim weren't suspected of that, and therefore they said, don't walk out with perfumed. It's only on your clothes. If it's on your body, your sweat is going to, anyway, it'll get absorbed in your sweat and you won't really smell it so strong, so you can do that. There's a machloket about whether we say that Rav Papa said that his hair is like his clothes and you can't put it in your hair, or his hair is not like his clothes and you can't put it on his hair, and his hair is like his body and it's okay. That would show, by the way, against what we saw before about rubbing it on someone's head, right? That it would, according to that, it was a problem to have it on your head, because if the guy was a Talmid Chacham, you couldn't put it on his head. Although head might be different than hair, actually, now that I think about it. It could be he was bald. You can't go out at night. This is why I said we get back to the night thing, although I was a little confused. It's not the same type of thing here about the dangers of the night. Here it's just saying don't walk alone at night because we're worried that people are going to think you were out with a prostitute. It's only if you don't have a set time. But if every night you go to learn and you come back at the exact same time, okay, it doesn't necessarily have to be to learn, but that's, of course, the context they like to talk about. And if you're going to learn, of course, you can go out at night because everybody knows that you come back at the same time. Then, of course, you'd have to end at the same time every night. Don't go out with patched shoes. Why not? Okay, first of all, they don't really tell you. The assumption is it just looks really disrespectful. We want Talmidei Chachamim to respect. They're symbols of Torah. They have to look respectful. This supports his statement because he said, it's looked at disrespectfully. They walk out with patched shoes. The Gemara now asks, Ini, is this really true? And you can imagine, they were Talmidei Chachamim, we've talked about this, that we're very poor, like Rabbi Yoshua. Remember, the walls of his house were black. So what do? If you have to patch your shoes up if they break. So Rabbi Chia bar Abba, you can't always buy new shoes. Rabbi Chia bar Abba nafik. He did walk out with these patched shoes. Amar Marzutra Bered Rav Nachman, they're going to basically narrow this halacha. Bitla gabetzla. You can't have a patch upon a patch. If it's one patch, it's okay. The law maran, and even this isn't a problem, only ela bepanta, if it's on the top part of the shoe. Aval begilda, if it's on the sole, late lamba, that's not a problem. Ubepanta law maran, even at the top, law maran ela beorcha, only if you're going out on the road. Aval bebeita late lamba, but if you're in your house, it's not a problem. The law maran ela b'yimot hachama, and only in the summer months. Aval b'yimot hakshamim late lamba. Why? Everything was all filthy, and your shoes would get full of mud, and if you had patches, no one would even be able to see them. It's all about the look here. You shouldn't talk to a woman in the shuk. He says, even your own wife you can't talk to in the shuk, because people won't know it's your wife, and they'll start to say, oh, what's this person doing talking to women? Okay, this is very strict. Tanya namihachi, another braita. Afilu hi ishtov, afilu hi bitov, afilu hi achoto, lefisha en akol b'ki'im b'krovotav. Not everybody knows who's related to you, so even your daughter, even your sister. Okay, so it's interesting that they add those. I was thinking those are relatives and you might actually look like them. Still, don't rely on that, and you can't. My time, why can't you hang out and eat with people who are amei haaretz? Dilma atelim shuche batchayu. They might kind of move, you might be swayed by them, peer pressure. You might start acting like them. Because people say, oh, you're lazy, you're the bad, you're the one who gets last to the Beit Midrash, right? People always make fun of the person who always shows up last to everything, right? You're lazy, you're this. Don't be the last one. Now, obviously, there's a bit of a problem here. Someone has to be last. So how could you say it's forbidden to do these things? So this shows that all these things are not exactly forbidden, right? Even you can imagine, right? To not talk to your wife in the shuk, or walk around with patched shoes, or have a little perfume on you, cologne on you, right? These aren't terrible things. They're just recommended not to do them. V'yesh omrim, last one. Af lo yafsia psia gasa da'amar mar psia gasa notelet lecha michamesh me'ora enav shel adam. Takes away 1 in 500th of your vision. Okay, what does that mean? It means very obviously, right? If you're arrogant, you can't see things clearly because you see things only through your own arrogant eyes, and therefore it makes you somewhat blinded. Mai takante, how do you fix this? Lahadre b'kiddusha de beis shimsha. This is a strange answer. It says you should make sure to drink the wine from Kiddush on Friday night. Some people say it means actually put the wine from the Kiddush in your eyes. Okay, some people do that with Havdalah, right? They put the wine in different places. Maybe they get it from here. But I think it means if you're careful about Kiddush, what is Kiddush? It's basically realizing, like all these blessings, that God is above you. So it removes some of your arrogance. So if you stick to saying Berakhot, and saying Kiddush to God, well, that keeps you in check and modifies your arrogance. Don't walk straight and tall. If you walk tall, it's like he's pushing away the Shekhinah by walking tall, right? He's kind of taking the space up of the Shekhinah. The whole world is full with the glory of God, and by you standing very tall and taking up more space, you're kind of taking away from the space of God.